during the game, they're expecting 3 to 5 inches.
During,
and that's 7 during the game.
Like a snowfall during the game, like not
Correct.
on the ground already.
Correct.
Wow.
They're expecting probably 2 to 3 inches pregame, and then 3 to 5 during the game.
And
so
now, John,
yep.
Yeah, so you've been down there when there's snow.
Yep.
Like, you guys know about this. So my thing all the time is like, I don't care all that much in terms of the game of the snow that happens before kickoff, because they do a pretty good job of getting that off prior to the game. What's it like during the game, and how much snow can they handle roughly? Like, you've seen some games where they just can't keep up with it and they're blowing the lines out. Like, what
they
is
can
that
handle
rate?
They can handle about an inch an hour.
Gotcha.
To clear the entire field. The NFL mandates that they blow the 10-yard lines at basically every TV timeout.
Yeah.
So you'll see those guys with the
army
blowers.
Yeah.
It's like a cheap Zamboni, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can handle about an inch an hour to keep the field clear, and then the challenge then is like halftime. When it kind of, if it accumulates during halftime, they're in trouble. And I think Don's going to come on here too in a little bit, and he's got a couple of good like bad weather stories, and the gamesmanship I'm sure that's going to be played tomorrow. With the Dolphins here, and the visitor locker room at Highmark is basically the smallest visitors locker room in the league. So it's going to be I think it's the only stadium left where there's only one entrance in and out of the field.
Yeah, and all that tunnel space and all those buildings back there, it's cold. It's cold back there.
It's cold,
like all the time.
Yeah, it feels like a bunker. So the Bills only use the game day locker room, obviously on game day. So that whole, even when they heat it, you're under, you're in concrete. So it feels like a bunker. The visitors' locker room is really cramped, really clammy, and I wouldn't be surprised if the water is a little colder. And you can kind of skirt around the edges of what you can do, gamesmanship wise. So I'm sure not only is it going to be uncomfortable for the Dolphins on the field, but even pregame and postgame, it's not. The Bills' visiting locker room is not a welcoming place on a nice day.
Yeah, I have found the Dolphins' approach to this funny, just in that, like, there's really nothing you can do down in Miami to get ready for this. And I found it funny last year when the Bills media was making a big deal of whether they were practicing outside or not. And it's like, I don't know, there's not a whole lot you can do to prepare for this type of weather event. But my thing is, experience does matter in terms of equipment. Like, these guys know exactly what they want to wear in Buffalo because they've played in these conditions and what feels good to play in these conditions. And I'll tell you right now, like, I haven't even played in these type of conditions, but I've been out there for 4-hour stretches as a season ticket holder in full snow gear. Like, granted, I'm not running around, my blood's not moving, but like, being out there all day, it's so cold to the core that if you don't have the right equipment on, like, that is stuff that really will impact you. And we heard Josh talk about that. I think it was last year in that one of those New England games where he saw Mitch Trubisky wearing a certain type of shirt, and he went in and tried it on and felt it out and was like, okay, yeah, that's exactly. And now you see him wear that every time the weather gets really cold. So I think there's some advantage to the experience of being in it.
We talked with Woody Ribick, who was the assistant equipment manager for 35 years. We had him on our podcast last Monday, and he talked about how the equipment guys will give, basically a heads up or, a tip to the visiting equipment guys based on conditions. Now, the visiting equipment guys and the team won't always listen to the home team, but it's a huge advantage. They know the turf, they know the field, they know the crown on the field. If you've ever been down on the field, there's a crown, where it pitches, lower towards each sideline. So it's pretty slippery if it's wet or snowing. So the Bills, having an equipment manager who's been there forever, an assistant equipment manager who's been there forever, they'll have the perfect cleats. Like, that's a huge advantage in and of itself. It's just the shoes, just the footwear.
They turned on the ACs in their practice facility, so it got down to like 50 degrees, which I would kill for a 50-degree day right now. I'd be outside without a shirt on. And
I heard like 50 or 60, which is pretty,
Yeah, I would love that. Right
mild.
Now. Oh my god. But he had that shirt on that was like something about like wish it was colder or something, which is just, for somebody who's not addressing it, that felt real like you are addressing it, right? Like he's saying to the media, we're not talking about it. This isn't in our heads or anything like that. But like getting a shirt made to talk about it feels like maybe it's a thing for you, to me.
Yeah. I see Don's in here now.
Hey, gentlemen, how you doing?
Hey,
What's
up,
happening,
Don?
man?
All right, Aaron, Chris, Josh. Hey, you guys are so right to be doing this show. This game's a big deal. Josh was telling me you guys were doing this, and a couple things came to mind. In 2000, I think it was 2002, and this is maybe a word of caution for the game. I do remember Ricky Williams the Saints traded their entire draft to get him, and then he quit football to smoke weed and came back to the Dolphins, and he admitted publicly it was just for money. So it was a big game late in the season, and we weren't sure, how committed he was to coming back. And then he also admitted that he had never played in snow. I'm like, oh my gosh, this weed head has never played in snow. And he ran over the Bills for like 200 yards in the first half. So, I mean, his athleticism took over, and it was.
He probably snuck up to Toronto and got himself some weed and
yeah, whatever helped him. But the Bills won the game. It was a big win. Bledsoe was peerless place in Eric Moulds, and it was a shootout, and the scoreboard guys were playing "Let It Snow, Let It Snow," and it was a big deal for back then. And then another thing I noticed, and this was just catching it from a completely random standpoint, was from a game experience. I was kind of surveying the stadium early on with a colleague, and I told Josh this story during a podcast, but I saw this guy go into a porta potty.
Oh, this is fantastic. This is the hard hitting analysis you're going to get
exactly.
on our podcast.
And I was not anywhere in a unique position to see this. Anyone could have seen this, but I happened to see this, and it's burned in my brain forever. But the guy was wearing a full snowsuit, like a snowmobile suit. He goes into the porta potty, and the porta potty, if you could see me, it wasn't horizontal. It was like more than horizontal. Like it was kind of angling downhill, but sort of teetering on there. So he goes in, and he has two buddies that he was going to the game with, and one just kind of lays his shoulder into it. It sort of wobbles back and forth. So he does it harder, and the whole porta potty goes all the way over downhill, and all these people are stopping to watch and like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to get out and just kill these guys. The door opens, a fist comes up like it's coming up from the grave, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a brawl. If there were cell phones at the time, it would have been on YouTube and all over the place. And he gets up, and somehow he was just like, haha, you guys. Wasn't anywhere near as mad as he should have been. And like they sort of give high fives, and all we saw was that he proceeded to go into the game.
Oof.
And sit in his seat, and all the stuff that was in the bottom of the porta potty that made him soaking wet he just sat there drenched in it, and it was very nasty. But so sorry to
I already ate dinner, so
That's the director of football administration, everybody.
Yes, right. And again, I was not anywhere near a unique position to see it. I just happened to, but it was during a Bills Dolphins game. We won the game, but that was a fan experience, but I do feel the Bills. These guys, they know what they're doing. They study every advantage that they have, and I really like the way tomorrow night should play out.
Yeah. We got Kevin popped in here also as a speaker. Kevin Massare, if you don't know, also on the Cover One Sports Network. What's up, Kev? You out there, man?
Just enjoying the real great stories, really, about the weather.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I do remember that snow game, that Ricky Williams snow game. That was wild. I remember watching that as like a teenager, absolutely impressed by what he was able to do in the snow, never having played in it. But the good news is They don't have Ricky Williams. They don't have anyone even nearly as talented. I don't even know if they have a real running back playing tomorrow. I don't know if Jeff Wilson's going to play or not. So
I would say Tyreek is probably
Yeah,
as talented
yeah,
in a different way.
yeah. I mean, they got to be a lot more creative getting him the ball.
Right.
Than, say Ricky Williams, you could just hand off like Frank Gore did in the snow game in 2017. But, it's going to be, we'll see if their total, I think the best stat ever is still the 0-4 to under 40 degree stat. So we'll see if they are able to kind of combat that.
My only concern with those stats, I think that I agree with you that like it's meaning, but if they bring it up on the broadcast, I'm going to be nervous because I feel like those stats are just always bound to be broken at some point. And that's like some of the fun of sitting around watching sports is to see something that's never been done before, and we see it happen all the time. And so that stuff always makes me nervous. When people bring those up, that you get that broadcaster jinx, makes me real nervous.
It's true. Yeah, I'll give you that one. I don't love the miss that Tyler Bass hasn't missed an extra point in a million kicks or the.
Yes, yeah. Whenever they say it, it's like, no, don't say it.
I swear that's why they say it, though, right? I think at this point,
it's good for TV drama, right?
Of course it is.
Like,
Tony can blame Jim Nantz, and Jim Nantz can blame Tony, and
that's right.
It is funny, but it is going to be an interesting game. I think the question I'd ask the panel is, who does it benefit? I think that's a cool talking point. Does it benefit the Bills or the Dolphins? Not necessarily who's played in it more. Which team does it benefit?
What does what benefit?
The weather.
So, okay.
I think if you take away the schematics, I think mentally, like Aaron was saying before, it has to favor the Bills. Like, Miami's talking about it too much. They keep saying how it's not in their head, how they're not thinking about it. Short week, third straight road game. If there's ever you get down 10, 14 points early and you get uncomfortable and you kind of want to pack it in and run for the bus, like, I feel like that's when the weather might come into play, is if the Bills jump out to a lead and Miami starts feeling cold and deciding that maybe they don't want to play, in the second half. I think that's where the advantage will be. Maybe not early, but mentally late if it's, if the Bills get out early.
And I think it was Armando from the Miami, from, I forgot, Fox News, covers Miami down, obviously. And he was the one that said on air in Rochester, in the sports bar in ESPN Rochester, and its sister station, that he said the Bills are soft based on his film and what he's heard around the league. So he thinks it benefits the Dolphins because the Bills are soft. I thought that was a really interesting perspective from like a different.
That's an absurd.
Yeah,
that's an absurd take.
As straight up, anyone that says that NFL players are soft, no matter what team they're on.
Yeah, I'd like
super
to see
disrespectful.
we had that conversation. See what evidence there is to support.
He said he's heard of teams and coaching and scouts that the Bills specifically are a soft team. So whatever that means.
Well, I think what it means is they're built to beat modern football teams, right? They're a little bit smaller, they're undersized, but they're fast and they play within the scheme. And so I guess that's soft, but like we've been talking about all week here at Cover One, they have a high missed tackle percentage, but they're stuffing the run better than any other team in the league. They're the best run defense in the league, one of the best by all metrics. And Miami is also a very good run defense. So on paper, to answer your question, Kevin, I still think this game favors the Bills, even though Miami has a good run defense. Both of these rush offenses are a little bit the same, but the Bills have been playing better lately. And I think trends matter when you're heading into a game. And I think the Miami run game is really stalled out. It's stagnant. And the Bills run game is picking up. And I think that's going to favor the Bills ultimately. When I think both run defenses are good, I think one run offense is going to be a little bit better.
Don't you take the their best unit of the team off kind of out of the play? Like, I mean, like you said, the Bills are beat the Chiefs, but like, if you're going to consider the Bills soft, I mean, aren't the Dolphins kind of built in a worse version?
I don't even know. Like, I mean, I'm trying to imagine where that sort of is it from the way that the Bills have fun when they're practicing, or the way that like Josh is willing to show emotion?
I mean, no, he claimed it was from other scouts. I mean, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. No,
isn't the word like finesse?
Right.
I would think it's finesse more than soft. I mean, you look at that playoff game last year against the Patriots when it was 10 below, and they smacked them. So anybody, it feels like finesse is probably the word that maybe was used, and maybe he twisted it a little bit into soft. But I feel like it's finesse more than soft.
And it's also untrue because when you start looking at some like red zone defense, the Buffalo Bills are number 1 in the NFL in DVOA, or number 2, like it depending on the category, if it's rush or pass. They're right there. Like you can't be a soft defense. Like it's not finesse down in the red zone anymore, right? Like it's in the trenches. And even on like the 3rd and short and 4th and short stuff, they're ups and the tops of the NFL. So I had this argument last year. I forget who it was. Somebody came out and was talking about how the Bills were soft this time last year. And I got super offended by that. Like the way I watch these guys play when we break down these games, I don't see really anyone all across this team style. You could call Taron Johnson soft. Get the hell out of here. You're out of your mind. Like the way these guys play, it is finesse to Josh's point, and they are built to play within the modern NFL system. So I can see why teams think maybe they're light or you can push them around a little bit, but soft is
they're built to beat the Chiefs.
Sorry.
Like, I mean, and that kind of guys, they'll tell you that. But like 31st special teams DVOA in Miami, I think that's going to rear its head up, right?
Yeah, and they're missing one of their primary gunners now too. So that could be a problem. But, I mean, going into the first matchup with Miami, the Bills were starting Damar Hamlin for the first time after Micah Hyde's injury, and they had Jaquan Johnson in for Jordan Poyer. Trey White was still out. You had Kyer Elam and Christian Benford starting outside. But Benford went down in the first half, and Jamarcus Ingram played the majority of that game.
You be special.
I mean...
you're right.
It's just a much different matchup in terms of like strength on strength, right? Like their strength has been their passing game, and our secondary is in a much better position now than we were. I mean, in that first game, even despite all of those injuries, the Bills were still able to stay in control. I mean, Miami had a tough time moving the ball. They only had 15 first downs to the Bills 31. And 212 yards of offense to the Bills 497.
And they also targeted Jaquan Johnson too. No, we talk about Johnson a lot, but they did too in the pass game though.
Yeah, he stands out, man. Like I liked him in the preseason, but when you actually see him in a game and when you watch back the film, like he's just too small. He's too small and doesn't have the athleticism to make up for that. Where it's an easy target for good NFL teams to just get there and make him get to the spot and win, and it's just not going to happen that much. So, but I have a question for everybody here too. You're talking about the defensive backs that are going to be in this game that weren't in the last one, and a guy that we haven't seen over the past couple of weeks here, Kyer Elam. We've heard a lot of talk, and now I don't know if the weather is going to impact the game plan people maybe thought that would present itself to be the game for Kyer Elam to come in and play, where we want to play some of that press coverage and have some more of that length. But I still think if they're going to let Tua try to pass in this weather, he's probably the guy to match up with these receivers. Do we think this is the week finally that Elam gets back into this cornerback 2 rotation or platoon or however they're going to do it?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's so tough to get a read on what the story is with Kyer Elam, but in terms of his talent, his speed, his ability to match up in man coverage, especially with the type of receivers that Miami has, it seems very logical that he would play. But I don't know if logic is dictating what's happening right now.
It's really curious. Like, the coaching staff obviously has a great grasp on like DB play, secondary play, but you can never figure out what they're doing, right? Like you wonder, is it mental with Elam? Like, is it not, being able to react quickly mentally? Because obviously physically he has all the gifts, but I wonder if it's more of a mental lapse or some kind of.
They have highlighted Dane's that ability for Dane to continue to play after making a bad play, which I think then people will say, well, he just continues to make bad plays. But
yeah,
but he doesn't. Like you saw that actually up in the Jets game. I don't think he got enough credit for some of the bigger plays that he ended up making in that game, some of the pass breakups that he made. Not that I want him out there, but I think that mentality from the coach's perspective, having seen him in so many games and in playoff games in big spots, you know what you're getting with a guy, and I think it's maybe easier when you have to count on that to know the flaws of the guy that you have versus you don't know yet with Elam how he's going to respond in big moments, in big spots as the season goes on. And there might be some lack of trust, even though they invested in him and trust in him. They just trust another guy more right now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as a not huge Dane Jackson fan, but seeing his like team value, I don't see Tiger Elam tomorrow. I mean, I think they're gonna rely on Dane Jackson in the snow game with his potential tackling ability, which they like, his versatility, what they like him in the scheme. I don't see them going, especially to originally it made sense with the game plan. I don't see it in the snow with a potential shift of game plans tomorrow. I don't see it overly. If something changes and it's milder than they thought, or the field's better condition, maybe. I just think they trust, like you said, in playoff football, Dane Jackson, and made some bad plays in the first half straight up. But then you're right. He did bounce back. I'll give him that. He did play better.
He hasn't had a good stretch here. I'm not coming out here to say the last month of football has been great for Dane Jackson, but it's also like
we have
pretty
seen better
par for
football
the course
from him in the past. I mean, we know that he's able to play better than he has.
And I think that matters to coaches more than it does to fans, that you can rely on a guy in a moment when you need to trust it.
You wonder
if ask a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is that Christopher Moltisanti?
I didn't even see Chris come in here. Yeah,
fame?
what's up, man?
Yeah, you can check me out on White Lotus as well if you'd like.
Well, wait a second. That's not Christopher Moltisanti, is it? That's the actor who played Christopher Moltisanti.
It's Imperioli, Michael Imperioli.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What's up, guys? I love you. I love what you do. You guys are so fun to listen to. I just have a question about what you're saying. Do you think there's some issues with evaluation within our front office and just the team in general? Because, I mean, we see flashes from, like, Khalil Shakir, and then he falls into the pits. We don't see him again for a long time. You know, like, we're doing weird things with Hines. The way we utilize McKenzie can be odd at times. It baffles me that we do this year after year. We have these, like, big-ticket players that can make flashy plays, and they just kind of say, all right, well, we know you can do something. We're just going to table you for now. So what do you think about that?
Hey, guys, what's going on?
What's up, Greg?
So for Chris, that's a good question. The challenge is a lot of people don't see the other stuff. So you see, like, Khalil Shakir is a good example. His issue is not his ability to run a route and to catch a football, which is the easiest thing for us watching the game to see. Unfortunately, he runs routes into other guys that mess up the leverage and the route combinations. He doesn't understand leverage in the spacing of where to go. He's a pretty horrendous blocker. He actually was
blocking is a big one, yeah.
Single-handedly responsible for multiple tackles for a loss, and he got himself benched. So it's hard because the stuff that's easy for us to see watching the game is like, oh, he's good at that. Well, yeah, no shit, he's good at that. It's like when you watch a running back that breaks a bunch of plays, and then you don't understand he's getting benched because he can't pass block when he's a pass protector and he's going to get the quarterback killed. And like, yeah, but put him on the field. He's good. Yeah, but he's going to get the quarterback killed. Like, that doesn't matter that he can break a play every once in a while. If the quarterback gets injured, he doesn't do us any good. So it's hard. Like, some of those things, we don't see the intricacies of those little pieces when they're, with all the other things that go into getting consistent snaps. You have to be good at everything to get consistent snaps.
And this roster, I think, is like, even though there's been struggles this year, this is a 10-3 team that is the first place in the AFC. This is a very good team, and it's hard to crack some spots, I think, also with the talent. And there's only one ball to go around in terms of like how to get guys involved. And so it's good to have these problems. These are exactly the problems we want to have, is like, how do we get Hines more touches? How do we get these playmakers that we all think can make plays more touches? But one thing I think also we have to keep in mind with this coaching staff, whether it's talking about why aren't these young players developing in the way that we assume that they will, or why aren't they subbing out Dane Jackson, is this coaching staff is much more patient than the fan base wants them to be. And and that's a good thing, though. We don't want knee-jerk reactionary decisions being made. Like, you trust in your scheme, you trust in your players. Guys are going to have slumps. You let them play their way out of it. You manage it, but have patience, and that's okay.
And to your point, sorry, Aaron, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was it.
To your point, Chris, about whether there's an issue with scouting, I don't think that is what's at play here. I mean, they saw something in Khalil Shakir, and it's something that we were all able to see in the preseason. He's got great hands. He's great at contorting his body to make tough catches, and there's a lot of potential there. He needs to develop certain areas of his game, and I think that is true for a lot of these guys that you see potential in, but they need development, and that's really the Bills' philosophy, right? Is draft, develop, and re-sign. And I think that guys they develop at different speeds, but I think overall they've done the front office has done a great job of identifying talent, and the coaching staff has done a great job of developing it.
Yeah, we're so used to needing rookies to play immediately because we needed talent because we had no talent anywhere. That now it's weird that we can be patient.
You're right. I think maybe it was like a PTSD thing I'm going through right now, because I feel like we've tabled so many good players that went to other teams and just thrived that I worry we're going to miss out. But no, that's a great point, guys. I appreciate that.
There's a perfect example late in the game last week where Diggs caught the bubble and James Cook just completely whiffed on his block outside. And I don't know if you guys, Greg or Aaron, if you guys talked about that play. And Diggs actually asked out of the game on the next play, and it felt like he was pretty frustrated that the way that play went down. And those little things, like you said, Greg, those are the things that it's tough for you to see on the broadcast unless you go back to the All-22, unless you're at practice on Wednesday and Thursday and you're seeing if these guys know their assignments. And like that play epitomized it for me. Was Cook just completely whiffed on an easy block that Stephon probably would have picked up 8-10 yards, and that's why the rookies sometimes don't play.
Yep, spot on.
Yeah, and that's why
to Chris's point,
go ahead.
That doesn't mean that maybe we don't need a little more trust. Aaron said earlier he's not out here to defame Dane Jackson. I'm here to talk bad about Dane Jackson. So if anyone needs anyone to talk bad about Dane Jackson, I'm here for you guys to talk bad about Dane Jackson. I said
I'm not defending him starting anymore.
Sometimes they do maybe err on the side of conservative. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's not crazy to think that. They do err on the side of conservative with wanting to lean towards veterans, wanting to lean towards that. But they've shown a history, we threw Spencer Brown out there right away. We've thrown a ton of other obviously we know the first round guys mostly. Kyrie Elam actually is the exception.
Christian Benford.
Yeah, we put Christian Benford was out there as a 6th round pick. So if a guy can play, they trust him. So you have to go reverse. If they trust Christian Benford as a 6th round pick out of 1AA Villanova to go out there and start against NFL wide receiver ones before Tre'Davious White even came back, then you got to trust that they're seeing something with the other guys that they're not ready to get those snaps.
Yeah, and as bad, I think another thing with that we get lost in is the chasing perfection, right? And I get it. We want to get better. We want this team to be trending in the right way as they head into the postseason, but we know they're going there. And we know there's still time. There's a month of football left to sort of still work some of this stuff out. And that's where I think the coaching staff's patience comes in play. They know this is actually the ramp-up period. I forget what podcast I was listening to the other day, but they're talking does the regular season even matter anymore? Or is it just you have the teams that are going to be in there except for the scramble at the bottom, but for the teams that are really good, does it matter that much as it matters just to be ramping up in the right direction at the right time?
Yeah, it's a legitimate discussion in San Francisco. I think for sure in San Francisco, because I don't think they can now officially jockey any more than position 2 or 3. Right. Literally, they have to determine how much they care to lock in 2 over 3.
Yeah, it's like March Madness.
Yeah, it's really a big interesting point. With so many games left for them that they have to determine. They can't drop to 4. I don't believe can catch Philly. They're literally trying to determine how they're going to play the remaining stretch of games to sit in the 2 or the 3 against Minnesota. So it's a really interesting, and Minnesota's in the same boat.
Yeah, I think we just chase this perfect roster. I think they will continue to prove it and get there. But with Dane Jackson playing the way he's been playing, the Bills are still a team that's averaging giving up 17 points a game. They're still one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think the defense still right now is the strength of this team.
Have you guys chatted at all about the percentages for tomorrow? Meaning what it means, what this game would mean for just the statistical future of the standings. Because with a win, the Bills are 99.9% favorites for the AFC East, 55% chance favorites for the bye, 20% chance favorites to win the Super Bowl. With a loss, 66% division, 18% bye, 10% Super Bowl. You're talking about a 33% boost, which is astronomical. And the only thing bigger than that is the Bengals game is actually larger in all those categories, even if it was played first. Doesn't matter if it was played first or if it was played when it's going to be played. That game is still bigger in every statistical model. So it's really interesting that the Bills have two really high leverage games. And it's really important. Like some numbers can really be locked up tomorrow. I mean, they're playing for a ton.
NFL knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
they can't technically lock up the division. They can lock up a playoff spot, and it's a 3-game lead with 3 games to go. So for all intents and purposes, they do kind of lock up the division, but It's not official until they get one more.
99.9. The bye is really in play, and the only reason it's not locked up is because the Dolphins do have the tiebreaker. But it's basically locked up. I mean, like you just said, it's all done. But more importantly, conversely to a win's a loss, and it drops a lot of those odds to 67%. And it starts to become something you have to really grind out for the end of the year. So it's humongous. And some of those models, I mean, the Cincinnati game is enormous. The Bills go up to 75% chance favorite for the bye with a win in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that game's going to be huge. And obviously, I mean, you can make an argument. Cincinnati's the hottest team in the NFL right now. Them or the Eagles. They just beat, Kansas City. They're flying high, in everything that they have going. They've got a two-headed, attack in both the backfield and in the receiving core, and a quarterback who's playing aggressive and smart. Like, they're more of a threat than I felt like they were, coming in. I kind of thought they were a little bit paper tigers last year and super lucky to go on the run. That's going to be a game where we're throwing haymakers, and is going to be, potentially an AFC Championship game preview in Week 17.
Yeah, and they lost half their roster, or offensive roster. So we're interested to see if they caught their injury bug at the wrong time.
Yeah, definitely a couple of huge matchups coming up. I'm curious to know how you guys think the Bills are going to attack Miami's defense tomorrow. Because last time these teams played, Josh Allen connected with 11 different receivers, and he found particular success hitting his running backs out of the backfield. Devin Singletary was the team's leading receiver with 9 catches for 78 yards on
Zach
11 targets.
Fumble this time. That's a bonus.
Well, Zach Moss had a 6-yard catch for a key third down in that first game, but you're not wrong about that. The weather, we've talked about obviously at length. Do you think the Bills are going to, shift the pass run dynamic that they typically have to account for the weather?
I think with the cluster injuries in Miami's secondary and how good their front four is, they need to have that short ball control passing offense where it's a lot of short passes, checkdowns, conversions to keep the chains moving. Don't give their defensive line time to get to Josh, but take advantage of that secondary. So I would love to see, it sounds crazy, but I'm fine if Josh passes the ball 50 times. So, I think that's the kind of drives for those 10, 12, 14 play touchdown drives that takes the life out of them and puts them in a position where they can, control the clock, control the ball, keep it away from Tua, and where he can't feed it to Hill and Waddle. We're dominating what's going on, and I don't think that secondary can slow us down. I think that they're going to be able to methodically move the ball down the field. The deep shots make me nervous because that's Josh having to stay in the pocket with 4 ridiculous pass rushers. So I'd rather them matriculate the ball down the field through the air, but I'm fine with that, and I think they can do it because I don't think that secondary is going to be able to stop them.
The way Herbert was evading that pass rush in the last game made me lick my chops a little bit that Josh could really do some work in a game like this where, like you're saying, Greg, I want to see him get the ball out of his hand and get that offense moving quick. I think he can pass in any weather, and I think the Bills already learned that in that New England game at the end of the game when they had to pass that, we probably should have passed the whole time here. And so I would love to see some deep plays develop, because I do think that just having the ball in Josh's hands in this game, also in the run game, is going to be where the ultimate benefit is. Like, the guy that touches the ball the most is Josh Allen. He grew up playing in college in bad weather and snow, and he had good games. He's done it in Buffalo his whole career. And then the guy that's touching the ball the most for the other side is Tua, and he's a little undersized. He doesn't have his arm requires it to be loft in accuracy. That's not strong football, this type of weather arm. And so I'm putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands as much as possible, because I think that's the ultimate difference in this game. And our quarterback's weatherproof and theirs isn't.
Yeah. And that's where the big win is, guys. If you think about it, like, their weakness to me is that secondary. I think you guys already alluded to 2 safeties being out. Eric Rowe, the really converted corner from New England, playing well in Miami as a safety, out. Elijah Campbell out, fill in. So, I mean, you're talking about a college free agent that's going to be starting tomorrow, most likely, in Vern McKinley, the third. So their 5th safety is going to be stepping in. They could pull someone off the practice squad to start, maybe Jamal Perry, someone that the Bills worked out with already this season. So, their secondary, Xavier Howard, is he going to turn it on at some point this year? He's struggled at times. Keon Crosen's been bad. I mean, they like their college free agent nickelback. But outside of that secondary's been what was once supposed to be their strength, with Jones and all the different players that they have there. Yeah,
Holland's a problem.
Yeah.
You got to watch out for him. I mean, Josh put the ball in harm's way on several occasions in the first matchup, and Miami didn't get any interceptions, but that's something to keep an eye on.
Couple things here. Go ahead, Greg.
P-O-R-I-P-P-I.
Gregory wanted to say goodnight to everybody.
Good night, buddy.
Good night, Gregory.
We'll talk to you guys
Have a great
later.
night, dude. Go Bills, guys.
Go Bills.
In the chat over here, people posting to the link of this. We're getting Gilliam back. Christian saying getting Gilliam back would/will be massive for this game. I don't disagree. I think that element's been missing, of having him and how he's involved in a game like this could be fun. And then Steve Noble is talking about Cole Beasley maybe having a huge game in his first game back. What do you guys think on either one of those personnel things for this game?
Yeah, I mean, and just to wrap up what we were just talking about with the ball control, I mean, I think those guys play into it, Gilliam and Beasley, because I mean, the last time the Bills and the Dolphins played, the Bills controlled the ball for 40 minutes, and it was a problem in Miami in that heat, because you had guys on the offensive line, and I mean, even the skill position guys were dropping like flies. In this game, though, I think you kind of want to be on the field more, right, and stay warm. You don't want to be sitting on the sideline more than you have to. I mean, if you have a chain mover like Beasley out there, and certainly Gilliam allows you to do all kinds of stuff in the offense that. I mean, he's a lead blocker. He can release out and catch a pass. He can stay in and pass block, obviously. So I mean, I would hope that they would utilize both of those guys.
I'd really like to see a lot of. I'd like to see a lot of like QB waggle, a lot of Josh on the move.
Mm-hmm.
Gilliam plays into that. Beasley plays into that. A lot of that short, controlled passing game. But the more that Josh is on the move, moves the pocket, I feel like in a game where the secondary might, the footing's bad, I feel like that's another big advantage. You see, even historically, a lot of these bad weather games, as long as it's not like wet, there's a lot of points. A lot of points in a lot of these snow games.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. People forget that it can fade, as long as it's not as bad as the Colts game. What was that, guys? Like 18 inches, right?
Yeah, that's unplayable. But if it's a little less than that and not wet like last weekend, that's where you see the offenses, have the advantage, like they always say.
Oh, because the offense knows where they're going, right? The defense can't cut.
Correct.
Can't keep up. So that's what's really interesting, is that you're right. It should fully benefit with a very mobile quarterback who's able to really make you think. I mean, the game plan to me favors the Bills in weather in this game. Now, that could change based on who they're playing week to week, but I'm just speaking of this week. I believe it fully benefits the Bills in a situation to where you have the mobile quarterback. You have a guy who can keep the ball if he needs to. He can make the throws. You have, receivers who are able to get open for him. And Cole Beasley is going to be an interesting name. I do think you see him this week. And I think he has a package specifically for him, specifically on third down to, you don't go 2 for 13 and then, you call up Cole Beasley for a reason. So I think those are all correlated. And Reggie Gilliam coming back to a good point. The offense seems to move better, especially running the ball with him in the game. So lots of cool updates for the Bills tomorrow. And I think Ant posted all of the differences from week 3 to this week of who should be playing. And it's a pretty big list. It's almost a starting unit.
Somebody in the Slack channel did mention that he missed Bobby Hart on there on his list. So because Bobby Hart was suspended for punching a Tennessee coach, and Bobby Hart probably would have played in that game the way the offensive line.
Yeah, short yardage stuff, sure. Absolutely.
Well, and just the way the offensive line was like depleted at one point in that game in the fourth quarter.
Missing Mitch Morse. I mean, remember we had a botched snap when we were trying to spike the ball at the end of the first half that would have led to a field goal attempt. I mean, and then Tyler Bass missing a 38-yarder. Like, those 6 points easily could have been the difference in the game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points.
Something you were saying, Kevin, made me think of, like, what teams would that advantage of weather backfire? Like if certain teams came to Buffalo in the playoffs and we had whatever the weather is, snowy, wintry mixes of weathers, what teams does that either even out for, or do they get the advantage?
New England. It's New England.
Tennessee maybe. But their defense, I don't think has an advantage. San Fran. Yeah, but they wouldn't come to Buffalo in the playoffs.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
New England.
No.
Well, it did last year.
That's only because, I swear to God, the Bills took too long to let Josh throw in that wind. He could have done it. They could have had more shot plays in that game.
I would think the Browns would be a decent team in the snow with that that running game, that O-line.
That defense, though. I think the Bills would cut up that defense.
The Jets.
Yeah, you saw a benefit to the Jets.
The Jets
in a different way last week.
Yeah.
I think the Jets would be a good benefit there to this game flow. I would lean toward a little bit. I just have had it in my head that it could benefit Baltimore. And they're going to have all their weapons back in the playoffs. They don't need to pass the ball. I think that you get a benefit there. The Bills are really good at stopping the Ravens, but I think that could help
backfire.
Yeah, it could backfire with the elements.
So let's talk about what positions it benefits, right? Because it's a detriment to guys who have to be reactive, right? Guys like corners and offensive linemen, like guys who have to, react to the player they're matched up with, have a disadvantage in the snow, right?
Also, offensive lineman pass blocking. Right. So the O-line in a weather game would obviously much rather run block and come off the ball rather than be backing up. Picture it. You're backing up in the snow and taking on the 270-pound guy running at you. So, that's obviously why the run game is so much more effective if it's snowing hard, is just because the O-linemen are reacting and going, sliding backwards.
Yeah, and I would think specialist positions would be also a huge challenge and would prefer, out of any players that are out there, would prefer pristine conditions because every single inch one way or the other matters when Reed's snapping that ball and when it's getting held, and that whole process needs to be so clean every single time that any type of variation to that is probably anxiety inducing for those specialists.
Don't sleep on punt returns too. Just catching the ball in that stadium in any wind is tough, let alone if there's snow in your face. So who returns punts for Miami?
Oh, he had a good return the other night, or the other game. I'm looking it up.
That's a tough.
His name off his head.
That's a tough assignment. That's a tough assignment here in the wind. It's an even tougher assignment with snow and wind, especially if he's a young guy.
Wilson, who's kind of like a journeyman vet. They use Raheem Mostert on returns, kick returns. I'm not sure with him being the starting running back without Jeff Wilson. I don't know if he'll return or not, but that's usually who they use. And they use the snowman Holland in punt return too, kind of like we use Hyde. So you might see Holland tomorrow, to be honest. even though he's semi-younger in his career. But they use Tyreek Hill in like big-time spots. And I've also seen Noah Igbenogany, the reserve corner, return too. So
I would think in this weather, you might just put Tyreek back there.
You think so?
In this kind, like to Josh's point, like that ball could come swirling in. If it's heavy snow, you could lose the ball on that. Like I would want the guys I trust the most to like. If we didn't have Hines in this game, like I don't know who I would trust to be
without Hyde. Yeah, I don't know
back there in a game like this. It wouldn't be a McKenzie. I'll tell you that.
The same idea with like it being tougher to be reactive. If you're trying to cover a punt or a kick, and you've got Tyreek Hill returning it. I mean, talking about the quickest, most sudden player. I mean, if he can catch it, it's going to be a problem.
If he's back there, you're kicking it. You're going out of bounds.
Yeah, you got to take the yardage hit.
Yeah.
He's got to go out of bounds.
Yeah.
They got to do the same with Hines too. He's super. We haven't seen a total break yet, but he's super dangerous.
I've loved Hines so
far.
He's
going to break.
He's a great returner.
He's got a lot of juice. He's got a lot of juice, on the punt return. The other thing I might look for is like a short pooch kick. One of those wind-driven. The ball lands at the 20, and the Dolphin guy is scrambling to run up and field it. Those are tough in the stadium as well with swirling winds.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It makes me laugh when people are complaining about Hines not being more involved in the offense because he's been such a great addition.
I mean, just the special teams production alone,
just that alone
would be good enough for me, but he is involved in this offense.
Involved.
Yeah. I think it comes back, though, like, I shouldn't laugh because it does come back to the point earlier about, like, why don't we see certain guys and stuff like that? Like, he's involved in the offense, but it's sometimes in ways that we don't see, right? Like, because there's only one ball that goes around per play, but he's
window dressing sometimes.
Yeah, his motion in that offense is doing something, and it will be there later, right? Like, you put stuff on tape to go back to it later. He's going to end up getting some of those touches at some point, but he's definitely involved.
Yeah, for sure. The Dolphins, I mean, just in general, guys, I mean, after beating the Bills, they lost 3 straight to potential playoff teams, including a 40-17 blowout loss to the Jets. Then they get 5 straight wins against teams with a combined record of 20, 44, and 1. And then another loss to a playoff team in the 49ers, and then another last week to the Chargers, in which they only generated 17 points against the 18th-ranked DVOA defense that was missing Derwin James, Bryce Callahan, and Sebastian Joseph Day to injury. And 7 of those points came on a super fluky 57-yard fumble 6 by Tyreek Hill. I mean, I don't know. I think, weren't the Dolphins a team earlier in the year, Aaron, that you were talking about being, what was the term you used, liars, or you just like...
Well, I called the Jets were definitely, I considered frauds. And that I kind of got some backlash on that after the Bills lost. That didn't look great for me.
I think Miami's a little overinflated, honestly.
What I will say, though, I agree that they are a little bit. That San Francisco game's tough. San Francisco's a tough team.
They're a good team.
Greg was talking about the Bengals being one of the hottest teams in the NFL. I think San Francisco might be one of the hottest teams in the NFL.
They are going to run Christian McCaffrey into the ground.
Good. Do it for a Super Bowl. I would do it too. So, in that Chargers game was just a weird. The corners got away with a ton in that game. That was a weird game.
There was a really terrible roughing the passer call on Jalen Phillips that negated a sack and extended a drive.
And both those games were still close, right? They were 1-score games, and so they had shots to win those games, even though
Tua looked bad in both games.
He did. But I mean, he's probably going to look bad in this game just because of the weather as well.
Exactly.
But
this is not exactly a get-right game.
No, but it's a team, like, I don't mind seeing them in the playoffs necessarily because we probably get weather back in Buffalo again. But, like, I wouldn't want to travel to Miami. I wouldn't want the Bills to be in the situation where they had to go to Miami and play them in the playoffs where that team could go. I think they're the most explosive potential offense in the NFL, and that's scary in a one-and-done scenario where if they get hot in a game, man, they can run anyone off the field in the right conditions.
More so than Cincy, even?
Tyreek Hill's special, dude.
Yeah, he's having a hell of a year, too.
He's a special dude.
This is going to be McDaniel's first divisional rematch as a head coach. That's going to be a big test, right? I mean, McDermott and Frazier have been there plenty of times before, so we can be confident they're going to be ready. But and obviously, McDaniel had experience, right, with San Francisco, but as a head coach, it's a different sort of thing.
Yeah, it's something.
As an update to we were talking about returns, just to kind of bring that full circle. Tyreek Hill's only returned 2 for -4 yards. They don't put him there much. Cedric Wilson is their guy on punts. He's a veteran. They probably trust him. He's fair caught 12 this season. He's 10 attempts, 84 yards. And they only run Mostert on returns, on kick returns. So I don't know if Jack Wilson doesn't go. I don't know if they use their starting running back to return kicks. No one else has done it this year for them. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like. And for the Bills, number 4 in the league is Nyheim Hines, 11.5 yards per return. A little bit less on kick returns, but, that's situational. But, you're talking about a DVOA and punt returns. The Bills are 4th in DVOA punt returns. So the Bills have a stark advantage. You're right. Will they flip the script putting back Tyreek Hill? He's generally hasn't done it this year and done it poorly.
I was going to say, if he's not doing it, they probably won't.
Yeah, they don't do it much. You might see it late in the game, but they do trust Cedric Wilson a lot. I think they're thinking secure the ball, don't give Josh Allen the ball in the 30. So I think you'll see Cedric, they'll kind of trade to maybe 5 to 10 yards every single time, then maybe the big boomer. I think you'll see Cedric Wilson returning punts tomorrow for Miami, which would be not positive for the Bills, even though he might be sure-handed. I still would rather have him returning punts than someone else. But will he be able to do it in the snow? He puts one on the ground and it sends them all into a frenzy. That's what the Bills need. They need a special teams turnover early because it'll send that team into a frenzy, in my opinion.
It would be nice to have one of those toxic differential plays, right, Aaron?
I love them. I love them, even though Warren Sharp doesn't track them anymore. All right, fellas.
You should start tracking them.
Dude, I don't have the time. I do have the time, but I don't want to do it. Guys, we're coming up on the 9:30 hour here, and that means I got to go hang out with my wife. I said I had to limit this to an hour.
It's time for Christmas movies.
Hey, Aaron, let me say one thing. I love, and I don't know how many of your listeners are like my age, Don's age. This feels so much like 1990. The hate for Miami is back. Like, this feels like the 1990 game, the second game here where Frank Reich played in the snow. The Bills won the division. Like, it's truly great to hate Miami again. The New England rivalry, what it was, and it was them dominating us for 20 years. But this is like the throwback rivalry that guys my age remember, and it's so easy to hate everything Miami.
It's as frustrating as it is, like preseason, to see these teams get better within the division. It is also fun to have teams that can actually compete with you to where it feels like a rivalry, right? I always got so mad when Bills fans would talk about a New England Patriots rivalry, because that is a rivalry in the same way that a hammer is to a nail, right? Like, that's not a rivalry at all. Whereas a rivalry would be now where, Miami got one on Buffalo. If Buffalo wins and then maybe next year they split again, you start to have some of those year in and year out. And now you got the rivalry brewing again.
I think it's funny.
Yeah, for sure.
As a mid-30s guy, guys, I agree. Like, I'm kind of in the split of the difference of this. I have lots of friends who always tell me how Miami's still their least favorite team ever. And I always was kind of like, I don't know. We kind of played bad football for a while there. But I get it. Like, they just truly hate Miami. And I think that's coming back now into this fan base and to different generations. So fun to see that come to fruition. And really,
Tyreek Hill's pretty easy to hate.
He really is. And I don't know.
He's also easy to love, though, guys. Like, he's so good.
He is, but he might be one of like the worst people.
He's hater love too now, right? Like, I see a lot of people hating him right now.
It's also like, just culturally, the differences between the city of Buffalo and the city of Miami couldn't be any more pronounced. New England and Boston and New York, like, they're Northeast cities. We have more in common with those cities, even if we hate their football teams. We have nothing in common with Miami at all.
No,
that's a good point. And you have Marcel Louis Jacques,
poor guy stuck in the middle of it,
and posting pictures from his window and at the same time fueling the Miami fan base.
Hey, you want to be a big J journal? That's what you got to do.
No, I think he was just posting that picture, just trying to be a nice guy.
I don't know.
Like, hey, I'm back. No, Marcel's a good dude. He's good people's. He wasn't trying to fan those flames. I can't see it. That's
Pre-game
just my
show, guys.
Yeah. What's that?
The pregame show is coming up. That's going to be live at 10 a.m. or premiering at 10 a.m. I should say. Don't miss that.
Yeah, and if you're up late, obviously Cover One post game show. Greg and I will be up way past our bedtimes, but luckily, that is the only benefit of this Saturday night game, guys. Is whenever we have to do these late games, it's usually like a Thursday night, and then it's like I still got to be up with the kids Friday morning, or it's a Sunday night, and Monday morning's the worst, right? And so Saturday I can at least sleep in a little bit on Sunday. And just watch
No Christmas
football.
movies. No Christmas movies.
Gotta knock them out during the day.
And guys, just a quick plug. We did 2 interviews this week with Don Beebe, and then just this morning we released an interview with Christine Lisi from ESPN Radio.
Yep.
Ironically, I had reached out to her last week, so it did not. It wasn't because of Jerry Sullivan, but it just the timing worked out that we interviewed her Tuesday morning, and she actually had already heard about what Jerry had said, which was kind of interesting, seeing that she, was in Bristol, Connecticut, and on ESPN. So that was a fun 30-minute interview we did as well, and it was kind of timely, just being able to talk to her.
That's awesome. I got to get running tonight, guys. I'm sorry. And yeah, go Bills, guys. Big win tomorrow. Let's go.
Sleep tight, everyone. Love you.
Squish the fish.